It was a bright afternoon in the city, the kind of day where the sunlight bounced off the pavement and made everything seem alive. People were walking briskly, going about their daily lives, some carrying groceries, others chatting on their phones. A young girl no older than 13 was walking along the sidewalk on her way home from school. Her hair bounced slightly with every step, and she clutched her sketchbook tightly, filled with drawings she had worked on that morning. Her backpack hung loosely on her shoulders, and she hummed softly to herself, lost in thought. She had just passed the small corner store where she sometimes bought candy after school. Today she had decided to skip the treat and save her allowance for something special she wanted. As she turned the corner, she noticed a police officer standing nearby. He was tall and broad, his uniform crisp and clean with a badge that gleamed in the afternoon sun. At first she didn't think much of it. She had seen officers around before, helping with traffic, talking to shop owners, or guiding lost children, but something about the way he was looking at her made her pause. The officer was staring directly at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. She slowed her pace, feeling a small knot of unease in her stomach. She tried to keep calm, reminding herself that she hadn't done anything wrong. Maybe he just wanted to ask for directions or needed help with something. She took a deep breath and continued walking, hoping he would just pass by. Instead, the officer took a step toward her, and his tone was sharp when he spoke. "Hey you, stop right there." The girl froze. She had never been spoken to like that by an adult before, especially not by a police officer. She stopped, holding her sketchbook a little tighter, and looked up at him. "Yes, sir?" she asked politely, her voice small but steady. He looked her up and down as if sizing her up for something. "What are you doing here all alone? You should be with an adult. Don't you know it's dangerous for a girl your age to be walking by herself?" The girl felt a surge of nervousness. "I'm just walking home from school," she said softly. "I live just down this street." The officer didn't seem satisfied with her answer. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her in the late afternoon sun. "Is that so? Let me see some identification. You should always carry some ID with you. Don't you know the rules?" The girl's mind raced. She didn't carry any identification because she was only 13. She opened her mouth to explain, but the officer interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "Don't argue with me. I'm just doing my job. Now where are your parents? Call them. If you can't, I'll have to take further action." Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her sketchbook. She felt embarrassed and scared, not understanding why she was being treated like this. People on the street had started to notice, their eyes shifting from their phones or conversations to the unfolding scene. A few whispered among themselves, some looking concerned, others unsure whether to intervene. I can call them," the girl stammered, reaching into her backpack for her phone. Her fingers shook as she dialed her mother's number. The officer watched her every move, arms crossed, tapping his foot impatiently. The girl's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for her mother to pick up, feeling the weight of the officer's stare. Finally, her mother answered. The girl's voice was shaky as she explained quickly. "Mom, there's a police officer. He says I need to prove where I live. I'm on Main Street near the corner store." Her mother's voice came through the phone, calm but firm. "Sweetheart, stay where you are. I'm on my way. Don't let him intimidate you." The officer snatched the phone from her hands without warning. "You don't need to call anyone. I can handle this myself." The girl's eyes widened in shock. She tried to pull the phone back, but he held it firmly. "Please," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I just want to call my mom." The officer didn't reply. He looked around, clearly enjoying the attention of the growing crowd. A few people had stopped walking, some recording the scene on their phones. The girl felt a flush of humiliation creeping up her cheeks. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet here she was, treated as if she were guilty of something serious. Her mind raced with fear and confusion. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked, her voice firmer now despite the fear. "I'm just a kid." "I haven't done anything wrong," the officer scoffed, shaking his head. "Kids these days don't understand respect. You should learn to follow rules or you'll end up in serious trouble." The girl took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her, some whispering encouragement, others looking uncomfortable. She realized that even though she was scared, she couldn't just break down. She had to stay calm, think clearly, and find a way to protect herself. She held her sketchbook in front of her like a shield, not just for comfort, but as a reminder of who she was. She wasn't a troublemaker. She was a student, an artist, someone with dreams and passions. She wanted to go home, safe and sound, and she refused to let this officer take that away from her. The officer's demeanor was cold, his authority looming over her. But in the girl's mind, a small spark of determination began to grow. She wouldn't let fear control her completely. She would find a way to make it through this, no matter how intimidating he seemed. Just then, a passerby, an older woman who had been watching quietly, spoke up. "Officer, maybe you should let her call her parents. She's just a child." The officer turned his gaze on the woman, his expression hard. "Mind your business," he snapped. The girl felt a pang of helplessness. People were watching, and yet no one was stepping in forcefully. Her phone was still out of reach, and her mother was on the way. But she could feel the minutes stretching endlessly. Her heart raced, her breaths came shallow and quick. She hugged her sketchbook closer, feeling a mix of fear, frustration, and growing resolve. She thought about her school, her friends, and the quiet moments she spent drawing in her room. None of that had prepared her for this, but she knew she had to hold on. She took another deep breath, reminding herself that she had a right to safety and respect. The officer continued to glare at her, seemingly enjoying the power imbalance. The girl felt a surge of anger at the injustice of it all, but she forced herself to stay calm. Crying or yelling wouldn't help. She needed to be smart, to stay composed, and to wait for her mother to arrive. Around her, the city continued its rhythm, but it felt distant, as if the world had narrowed down to just her and the officer. Every second seemed stretched, heavy with tension. She noticed a few more people stopping, their expressions a mix of concern and discomfort. Some whispered, some fidgeted, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. The girl's mind raced with possible ways to handle the situation. She considered speaking more firmly, trying to assert herself, but she knew the officer's mood could turn in an instant. She decided to stay polite, clear, and unwavering in her words. She would not let him humiliate her further than he already had. Then, in the distance, she spotted a figure walking toward her. Someone tall, broad, with an unmistakable presence. She didn't recognize him at first, but there was something commanding about the way he moved. Her heart skipped a beat, a mix of hope and relief flooding through her. Perhaps help was coming, someone who could change this frightening situation. The officer didn't notice the approaching figure yet. He was too focused on the girl, too engrossed in his display of authority. But the girl, sensing the shift, felt a tiny flicker of courage. She stood a little taller, hugged her sketchbook a little tighter, and waited, hoping that this new presence would bring the safety and justice she needed. The tension in the air was thick, the moment fragile, and everything seemed to hold its breath as the scene on the street reached a turning point. The girl stood frozen for a few moments, her hands clutching her sketchbook as her eyes shifted from the officer to the figure approaching from a distance. She felt a faint glimmer of hope, but the fear still clung to her like a shadow. Every second felt long, and the murmurs of the onlookers created a low hum around her. She tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself to stay calm. The officer still loomed over her, his voice firm and intimidating. "What are you waiting for? You need to show me you're not hiding anything. You think just standing there will get you out of trouble?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I'm not hiding anything. I just want to call my mom," the officer snorted. "You should have thought about that before wandering around alone. Maybe you think the rules don't apply to you." She wanted to say more, but she realized it wouldn't matter. Words alone couldn't calm the situation. She looked at the people around her, noticing their expressions. Some were whispering, others just watching, unsure if they should step in. A few had their phones out, quietly recording the scene. She felt both embarrassed and strangely reassured. At least someone would know what happened. The figure approaching had grown closer now. The girl recognized him from posters and news stories, though she had never expected to see him in person. His presence seemed to cut through the tension, and the officer finally looked up from her, noticing the newcomer. The man's steps were purposeful, confident, and he carried an air of authority that did not rely on a badge or uniform. He scanned the scene quickly, taking in the girl's frightened posture, the officer's intimidating stance, and the gathered crowd. Then he stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, what's happening here?" The officer turned, his brow furrowing. "This is none of your business," he said sharply. The man didn't back down. "It is my business if a child is being treated unfairly." "Step back, please." The girl's heart leaped. She could feel a shift in the air. The officer hesitated, unsure how to respond. The man's presence alone was enough to change the dynamics. People around them seemed to lean in, their whispers growing louder. The girl took a small, shaky step back, feeling slightly safer. She wasn't completely out of danger, but having someone intervene made her feel less alone. She wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. "Look," the man continued, "you're a police officer. You have responsibilities, but that doesn't mean you can treat children like this." She's scared, not a threat. "Please let her go." The officer's jaw tightened. "I'm just doing my job. She needs to follow the rules. She is following the rules. She's a child. There is no rule being broken here," the man said steadily. "You are intimidating her, and that's not right." The crowd started to murmur more audibly. Some clapped softly as if to encourage him, while others nodded, recording everything on their phones. The officer looked around, suddenly aware that this was no longer a private matter. The public was watching, and his actions could not go unnoticed. The girl felt a mix of relief and nervousness. Relief because someone was finally standing up for her. Nervous because she still didn't know what would happen next. The officer looked frustrated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the man's calm presence seemed to hold him back. "Let's not escalate this," the man said. "Step back and allow her to call her parent. That's all that's needed." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officer's stance softened slightly. He muttered something under his breath and took a step back. The girl's hands trembled as she retrieved her phone. She quickly dialed her mother's number again, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother answered almost immediately, and relief washed over her. "Are you okay?" her mother asked. "Yes, Mom. I'm fine," she said, glancing at the officer, who now avoided looking directly at her. "Someone help me. I'll wait for you here." Her mother's voice was firm but soothing. "Stay there. I'm coming. Don't worry about him. You did the right thing." The girl's heart felt lighter hearing those words. She realized that even in a frightening moment, courage could exist in small actions, staying calm, speaking clearly, and waiting for help. She looked at the man who had intervened and gave a small, grateful nod. He smiled slightly and nodded back, reassuring her without needing words. The officer muttered something else, clearly annoyed, but the presence of witnesses and the man's calm authority kept him from acting further. People in the crowd started to step closer, offering quiet support. One woman held her child's hand tightly, her eyes fixed on the scene, while another man whispered encouragement to the girl. For the first time since the incident began, the girl felt a sense of strength. She realized that she wasn't entirely powerless. Others could stand up for what was right, and even in frightening situations she could remain composed. The officer's authority did not define her worth or safety. As she waited, she thought about her sketchbook, still clutched in her hands. Those drawings represented who she was, her imagination and her voice. She felt a renewed determination to protect that part of herself, no matter what challenges she faced. The small sketches of landscapes, people, and animals now seemed like symbols of resilience. The approaching footsteps of her mother brought another wave of relief. She saw her mother rushing toward her, a mixture of worry and anger on her face. The girl waved quickly, her hands trembling, and ran a few steps toward her. The man who had intervened stepped aside, allowing them space, and gave the girl a reassuring smile. Her mother reached her quickly, wrapping her arms around her in a protective hug. "It's okay now," her mother whispered. "You're safe. I'm here." The officer watched silently as the mother and daughter spoke, the tension between them undeniable. People in the crowd murmured among themselves, some shaking their heads at the behavior they had witnessed. The girl felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Her fear hadn't vanished completely, but she knew she had survived the encounter, and that was a powerful realization. The man who had intervened stayed for a moment, ensuring that the situation had truly calmed down. He gave the girl's mother a brief nod and then began to step away. The girl felt a rush of gratitude. Without him, she didn't know what might have happened. His courage had made all the difference. As they walked away together, hand in hand, the girl's mind replayed the incident. She thought about the officer, the crowd, and the man who had stepped in. She realized that fear and bravery could exist side by side, and sometimes help could come from unexpected places. The afternoon sun seemed a little warmer now, and the sounds of the city felt less intimidating. On the way home, the girl held her sketchbook close. She thought about her friends, her school, and the safe little corners of her life that had seemed ordinary until today. She felt stronger somehow, more aware of herself and her surroundings. The world could be unpredictable and sometimes frightening, but she had the ability to stay calm, to stand her ground, and to recognize help when it came. By the time they reached their front door, the girl felt a sense of closure for this chapter of her life. She knew the memory of the incident would stay with her, but it no longer felt overwhelming. It had taught her something important about courage, patience, and the power of intervention. Inside the house, she set her backpack down and opened her sketchbook. She stared at the pages filled with drawings, each line and shade reminding her of who she was. The incident on the street hadn't changed her essence. It had strengthened it, and though she hoped never to face such fear again, she knew that she could handle it if it came. She had learned that even in moments of vulnerability, courage and resilience could shine through, and that sometimes the kindness and bravery of strangers could change everything. The city street seemed calmer now, but a lingering tension still hung in the air. The girl held her mother's hand tightly as they walked slowly toward the nearby corner, making sure to keep a safe distance from the officer who had caused so much fear. The officer, still standing nearby, watched them silently, his expression unreadable. The girl's heart was still racing, but she knew she had taken the first steps to reclaiming her sense of safety. Just as they were about to reach a quieter part of the street, the tall, commanding figure who had stepped in earlier returned, walking with purpose. The girl recognized him instantly. He was someone she had seen on TV countless times. His presence carried a quiet authority, and even in the middle of the busy street it was impossible not to notice him. The man walked directly toward the officer, who seemed to grow uneasy under his gaze. "Sir," he said in a calm but firm voice, "you need to step back and let this child go. She is not breaking any rules, and she does not deserve to be treated this way." The officer shifted uncomfortably, his pride and authority clashing with the presence of someone who clearly commanded respect without the need for a uniform. "I'm just doing my job," he muttered. "She should understand the rules." The man's expression did not change. "Doing your job does not mean threatening a child. You are accountable for your actions, and right now, this is not acceptable. Step back." The girl clutched her mother's hand even tighter, feeling the tension between the two men. She could sense the change in the atmosphere. The crowd had grown slightly larger, with more people stopping to see what was happening. Some recorded the scene on their phones, others whispered in disbelief. The girl could feel their eyes on her, but instead of feeling frightened, she felt a small spark of courage. She realized she was no longer alone. The officer hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. The man continued to approach slowly, making sure to maintain a calm and non-threatening demeanor. His steps were deliberate, measured, and full of confidence. The girl noticed the difference immediately. This was someone who did not need to shout or intimidate to be heard. "You see a child alone and frightened," the man said, addressing the officer. "You see someone smaller and weaker, but that does not give you the right to humiliate her. You have a responsibility to protect, not to scare. Step aside." The officer's face reddened with frustration. He looked around, noticing the growing number of people watching. For the first time, he seemed aware that his actions were being judged not just by the girl or her mother, but by the community. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, some expressing disapproval, others simply watching in awe. The girl felt a mixture of fear and relief. Fear, because the situation could still escalate, and relief because the man's presence made it clear that the officer could not continue his intimidation unchecked. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a reassuring squeeze on the hand. "I think it's best if we resolve this calmly," the man continued, his tone unwavering. "You can continue your work, but not at the expense of a child's safety or dignity. Let her go." The officer finally took a step back, muttering something under his breath. He was clearly uncomfortable, but the crowd could see that he had no choice. The girl's heart beat faster as she realized that the immediate threat was over. At least for now, she could breathe a little easier, though the adrenaline still coursed through her veins. The man turned to her and gave her a small, encouraging smile. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl nodded, still holding her sketchbook tightly. "I think so," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Good," he said. "You were very brave. It's not easy to stay calm when someone is trying to scare you. You did the right thing." The girl felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of validation. For so long she had felt small and powerless, but now she realized that courage could be quiet. It didn't have to involve shouting or fighting. It could be about standing still, holding on to oneself, and waiting for help. The officer, realizing he was no longer the center of attention, finally turned and walked away, his steps heavy with frustration. The crowd began to disperse slowly, and the girl could hear whispers of admiration and surprise. She felt a mixture of pride and relief. The ordeal was far from over, but she had survived the most intense part. The man stayed for a few more moments, making sure the girl and her mother were truly safe. He gave them space, but his presence alone had ensured that no further intimidation would occur. The girl looked up at him again, wanting to express her gratitude but unsure how. He nodded at her, understanding without words, and then began to walk away, blending back into the city crowd. As the girl and her mother continued toward home, she reflected on what had happened. She thought about the officer's behavior, the fear she had felt, and the courage she had found within herself. She realized that even in moments of vulnerability, one could find strength. She could stand her ground, and she could recognize the people who would step in to help. The city around them seemed quieter now, as if it had taken a collective breath. Cars moved steadily, pedestrians walked with purpose, and the usual noise of urban life filled the air. But for the girl, the world had changed in a small but significant way. She had faced fear, and she had seen how courage and intervention could alter the course of events. Inside, her mind replayed the moments in vivid detail. She could see the officer's stern face, the way he had tried to assert control, and the calm, steady presence of the man who had stepped in. She realized that actions mattered, that standing up for someone else could change their entire experience, and that courage could come from unexpected places. Her mother noticed the contemplative look on her face. "You handled yourself very well," she said gently. "I know it was frightening, but you stayed strong. I'm proud of you." The girl nodded, feeling a sense of pride and growth. She had learned that even in situations that felt unfair or frightening, she had the ability to stay composed, to protect herself, and to recognize help when it came. The sketchbook in her arms seemed heavier now, filled with the weight of experience as well as creativity. As they reached their home, the girl felt a sense of safety she had not felt since the incident began. The street outside, once a place of fear and intimidation, now felt like a space where courage had made a difference. She realized that she had survived not just because of the intervention, but because of her own composure and presence of mind. Inside, she set down her backpack and opened her sketchbook. The drawings, which had been a source of comfort before, now felt like a testament to resilience. Each line, each sketch was a reminder that she had faced fear and she had endured. The experience had left its mark, but it had also strengthened her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Later that evening, as the girl sat by her window, she thought about the people who had helped her. She realized that sometimes, heroes came into life not just through fame or recognition, but through actions that made others feel safe and respected. The lesson was clear. Courage and kindness could be powerful forces, capable of transforming even the most frightening moments into opportunities for growth and hope. After the officer walked away, the girl and her mother stood on the sidewalk, catching their breath and trying to calm their racing hearts. The air still felt heavy with the tension of what had just happened, but there was also a quiet sense of relief. People in the crowd began to disperse slowly, some still whispering about what they had witnessed, while others checked their phones, sharing the incident with friends and family. It was clear that the moment had left an impression on everyone who had seen it. The girl's mother pulled her close, holding her tightly. "It's over now," she said softly. "You're safe. That's what matters." The girl nodded, feeling the weight of the past hour slowly lift. Her hand still clutched the sketchbook tightly, but she felt a growing sense of pride. She had stayed calm, she had spoken up, and someone had come to help. She realized that courage came in many forms, sometimes in small, quiet ways. As they walked toward home, they noticed a few journalists from local news outlets arriving at the scene. Some had cameras while others were speaking quietly into microphones. The crowd that remained seemed more curious than concerned now, and the girl's mother took a deep breath. "They're going to report this," her mother said, her tone a mixture of concern and resolve. "But that's okay. People need to know what happened." The girl's eyes widened. Do you think they'll say bad things about me? Her mother shook her head. No, sweetheart. They'll see you as the brave child who handled a difficult situation with courage. The story's about how you stayed strong and how someone helped you. As they continued down the street, the girl reflected on the lessons of the day. She thought about how easily fear could take hold, how intimidating someone in authority could be, and how important it was to have support when facing such moments. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. By the time they reached their home, the girl felt a sense of calm settle over her. She had survived something that could have been much worse. And she knew that she had learned an important lesson about resilience, trust, and the power of kindness. Inside, her mother guided her to sit down while she made a few phone calls. She spoke firmly and clearly, explaining what had happened to authorities and ensuring that the incident would be recorded officially. The girl watched, feeling reassured that the situation was being handled responsibly. After a while, her mother turned to her. "You did the right thing today," she said. "You stayed calm, you stayed polite, and you waited for help. That's more than most people could do in a situation like this." The girl smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. She thought about the man who had stepped in, how his presence had changed everything. Without him, the officer might have continued to intimidate her, and the situation could have escalated. She realized how important it was to have people who were willing to step in and do the right thing. Later, the family gathered around the television to see the local news coverage. The incident was reported with a focus on the officer's inappropriate behavior and the intervention that prevented further harm. The girl saw herself on the screen briefly, looking small and frightened but standing her ground. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. It was not easy to see herself in that vulnerable state, but she knew it had been real, and it had been brave. Over the next few days, the story spread on social media and in local communities. People expressed their support for the girl, praising her courage and the way she handled the situation. Many highlighted the importance of standing up against mistreatment and the power of intervention. The girl and her mother received calls and messages from friends, neighbors, and even strangers offering words of encouragement and admiration. The girl was surprised by how much attention the story had received, but she also felt proud that her experience could inspire others. She realized that her ordeal had not been just about fear. It had become a story of courage, accountability, and the importance of doing the right thing. The officer faced scrutiny from his superiors and the public. Reports were filed and internal investigations began. The community expressed concern about the behavior and called for proper accountability. It was a reminder that actions, especially those of people in authority, had consequences and that fairness and respect could not be ignored. The girl continued to reflect on the experience, thinking about how it had changed her perspective. She understood now that fear was temporary, but courage, resilience, and support could create lasting change. She thought about the lessons she had learned, the importance of staying calm, speaking clearly, and recognizing when to seek help. She also realized the significance of witnessing acts of kindness and intervention, and how such actions could alter the outcome of a difficult situation. As the days passed, the girl returned to her routine. School, friends, and her sketchbook provided comfort and normalcy, but the memory of the incident stayed with her, not as a source of fear, but as a reminder of what she had endured and how she had grown. She felt stronger, more aware of her surroundings, and more confident in her ability to handle challenges. Her sketchbook, once just a collection of drawings, now felt like a symbol of resilience. Each sketch seemed to carry the weight of her experience, a testament to her courage and growth. She spent time adding new drawings, reflecting her thoughts and emotions, and finding a sense of peace through creativity. The community around her also seemed to respond positively. Teachers spoke with her about bravery and the importance of standing up for oneself, while friends and neighbors offered encouragement. The incident had sparked conversations about respect, responsibility, and the role of authority in the community. It was a reminder that even small actions could have a ripple effect, influencing others and promoting positive change. The girl and her mother continued to process the experience together, sharing their thoughts and feelings openly. They spoke about fear, courage, and the importance of acting with integrity. Through these conversations, the girl developed a deeper understanding of herself and the world around her. She realized that life could present unexpected challenges, but with resilience, support, and courage, she could navigate them successfully. By the end of the week, the girl felt a renewed sense of confidence. She knew that she had faced something difficult and had come through it stronger. She understood the importance of standing up for oneself, recognizing acts of kindness and seeking help when needed. The experience had left a lasting impact, shaping her perspective and strengthening her character. As she returned to her daily routine, she carried with her the lessons of the past days. She knew that fear might arise again in the future, but she also knew that she had the inner strength and external support to face it. The incident on the street had become more than just a frightening moment. It had become a story of courage, accountability, and empowerment, one that she would carry with her as she grew older and faced new challenges. Weeks passed since that tense afternoon, but the girl still remembered every detail clearly. The sun, the officer, the crowd, and the tall figure who had come to her rescue were etched in her memory. She had grown stronger because of the experience, and though it had been frightening, it had also taught her important lessons about courage, kindness, and standing up for oneself. The girl had returned to her routine at school. Classes, friends, and her art projects filled her days. But she approached life with a newfound sense of confidence. She had learned that even in moments of fear, she could remain calm and composed, and that help could appear when least expected. Her sketchbook, always her safe place, had become a source of reflection. Each page now seemed to carry more than just drawings. It carried memories, lessons, and feelings that she had experienced over the past weeks. Sometimes she would draw the street where the incident had happened, not as a reminder of fear, but as a symbol of resilience and strength. Other times she sketched people who had made a difference in her life, remembering the kindness that had changed everything that day. Her mother had noticed the changes too. The girl seemed more mature, more thoughtful, and more aware of herself and others. One evening, as they sat together working on homework at the kitchen table, her mother spoke gently. "You have grown a lot since that day," she said. "You handled something very difficult and you learned from it. That experience will stay with you, but it will also make you stronger." The girl nodded, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. "I guess I did learn something," she said quietly. "It was scary, but I didn't give up. And someone helped me when I needed it." Her mother smiled and squeezed her hand. "Exactly. That's the lesson. Fear is temporary, but courage and kindness can last a lifetime." In the days that followed, the girl also became more aware of her community. She saw the ways people looked out for each other, small acts of kindness, and the importance of standing up for what is right. She understood that everyone had the power to make a difference, whether by offering support, speaking up, or simply being present. The story of the incident had made waves in the local community. People admired the girl's bravery and the way the situation had been handled. She received letters and messages from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who wanted to commend her courage. Each message made her feel supported and reminded her that she was not alone, that people could come together in moments of challenge. Despite all the attention, the girl remained humble. She did not seek praise for what had happened. Instead, she focused on the lessons she had learned and how she could continue to grow. She realized that experiences like these, though difficult, could shape one's character and perspective in positive ways. She also thought about the man who had intervened, the one who had stepped in without hesitation. She did not know him personally, but his actions had left a lasting impression. She admired his courage and calmness, and she hoped to carry that same sense of responsibility and care in her own life. The incident had shown her that heroism was not always about fame or recognition, but about making the right choices in critical moments. One afternoon, while sketching in her room, the girl paused and looked at her drawings. Her hands traced the lines of the street where it had all happened, the faces of the people who had watched, and the figure who had helped her. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and reflection. She realized that life could present unexpected challenges, but it could also reveal inner strength and the kindness of others. As the days turned into weeks, the girl found herself sharing her experience with friends at school. She spoke about fear, courage, and the importance of speaking up when something felt wrong. Her story inspired others, encouraging them to act with integrity and support one another. She found that by sharing her experience, she could help others understand the importance of standing strong and seeking help when needed. Her relationship with her mother also grew stronger. They talked openly about feelings, fear, and resilience, and the mother became a steady source of guidance and encouragement. Together, they reflected on the lessons of the incident and discussed ways to approach challenges in the future. The girl felt reassured knowing that she had someone she could trust and rely on, and that her experiences, no matter how difficult, could be shared and understood. The girl also found comfort in small routines and creative expression. She continued to draw, to write, and to immerse herself in her art. Her sketchbook became a place where she could process emotions, explore her thoughts, and document her growth. She often drew scenarios of bravery, imagining herself helping others in need, inspired by the kindness she had experienced. As time passed, the girl realized that the incident had taught her more than just courage. She had learned about accountability, the importance of helping others, and the impact of positive actions. She understood that even small gestures could have significant effects, and that standing up for what is right could inspire change. The experience had shaped her worldview, making her more empathetic, aware, and confident. One evening, the girl and her mother went for a walk in the neighborhood. The street that had once felt intimidating now seemed ordinary, even peaceful. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow on the buildings and pavement. The girl felt a sense of closure and understanding. She had faced fear, experienced courage, and witnessed kindness. The incident was no longer a source of fear, but a story of growth and empowerment. "Do you remember that day?" her mother asked softly. "Yes," the girl replied, smiling faintly. "I remember being scared, but I also remember someone helping me, and I remember standing my ground." "That's right," her mother said. "You were brave, and you also learned something important. That's the true strength." The girl nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she had the tools to face them. Courage, reflection, empathy, and the support of those who cared would guide her in the future. She had learned that fear could be met with calmness, that help could come unexpectedly, and that bravery could take many forms. As they continued their walk, the girl felt a quiet sense of pride. She thought about her sketchbook, her school, her friends, and the people who had made a difference in her life. She realized that even ordinary moments could carry extraordinary lessons. She had grown through experience, and she knew that she could carry these lessons forward. The girl returned home that evening feeling empowered. She set down her backpack, opened her sketchbook, and began to draw. She drew the street, the people, the tall figure who had helped her, and herself, standing brave and composed. Each line she drew was a reflection of her journey, a reminder of the strength she had discovered within herself. As the night grew quiet, she looked out the window at the city lights. She felt a sense of hope and possibility. The incident that had once been a source of fear had transformed into a story of courage, kindness, and growth. She knew that she would face challenges again in life, but she also knew that she had the resilience, wisdom, and support to overcome them. The girl went to bed that night with a peaceful heart. She had learned that fear was not permanent, but courage, empathy, and kindness could last a lifetime. She knew that life would continue to test her, but she was ready. She had the strength to face whatever came next, the knowledge that help could appear when needed, and the understanding that even in the most difficult moments, one could find growth, hope, and empowerment.